we'll start with an opening statement from Coach about this upcoming week with Louisville and Notre Dame, and then go for further questions.
Well, as of an hour or so ago, I think we were at 8,000 tickets out. So we are excited to be back in the Petersen Events Center, where we plan and hope to be hosting the first few rounds of the NCAA tournament. So it's good to get some practice reps here, and it's also going to be great to play Louisville, who's having a tremendous season. And it just seems like the last few years, every time we play them, there's either hosting implications on the line or potentially ACC championship implications. And so this year is no different, and we expect it to be a great match.
So your programs and Danny's program, they've kind of risen together simultaneously. So what's that been like to have that rivalry grow between the two of you? And I'm sure is it more of a friendlier thing just because there's not like this deep-seated hatred between the schools like Pitt and Penn State or something like that?
Yeah, it's been a growing rivalry. I think the early days was just both of us trying to win the ACC and be the best team in our conference, and and then all of a sudden that it turned out that was, that standard was a pretty good standard nationally, and so I think in terms of schools, not as historic of a rivalry as Penn State, but for volleyball, I think the players on both teams will definitely be up for it.
What would you say is what typifies Danny's teams? Like, what are some of the characteristics that they consistently bring to the court year after year?
I think that they play good defense, and like us, they like to take a lot of big rips. They typically aren't a team that is going to try to tip their way to victory. So you can expect a powerful game, and they're tough. So they can be down in a game and still find a way to claw back in. And so they're like us in those ways, I guess.
Coach, do you feel like Pitt and Louisville were like the start of making ACC like kind of a volleyball conference right now? Because before it used to be like you and like another school, and now there's 7 different teams ranked and 2 others receiving votes.
Well, I don't know that I have the historical, idea to know how good we were in the 80s, or. But when I got in the conference, Florida State was just, a year or two out of being in the Final Four. UNC was a top 10 team. So there's been great volleyball in the ACC for a long, long time. But I think the recent, emergence of our 2 programs along with Georgia Tech, and then adding Stanford, I think, we're as strong this year as we've been.
What's your relationship like with Danny? How often do you guys talk in the off season at all?
We have a good relationship, but how often? I guess it just depends if there's a scheduling, or if we're talking about being in a tournament, or. But yeah, we've I think helped each other out over the years.
Was it Louisville a few years back? You played some the set went to 35 points or something. Or am I thinking of a different school? I feel like I remember some marathon match.
We've had. Who was the last one we had? That's a good question for our SID. When was the last game we had to win in the 30s? I don't recall it being Louisville, but we've definitely had some. There's no question that we are preparing to be in a set that's 22 all, or something really tight at the end.
Do you think there's any momentum from last season, the way you guys won this past 2 matches in the Elite Eight and here at the Pete in November, or do you think a whole new season?
I don't think there's momentum. I think both teams are in reality of how good the other team is, and both teams want to win.
Anybody in particular on Louisville's side of the net that you look at and say, we might have to figure out a way to make her uncomfortable, or maybe game plan toward her a little bit?
Well, there's no question that their two outsides are two of the best in the country, and so we're going to have to do a good job against the left. But probably Maldonado is, a newer player for them who's having a nice season, and so that's I'd say the biggest change from last year.
Do you feel like your team gets a little bit more excited for a rivalry match against Louisville than other ACC matches?
For sure. I think we get, I think anytime you're playing a top 10 team, your squad is a little bit more, a little bit more attentive in the scout, and they're definitely excited.
I saw they run a 6-2. Have they normally run this in the past, or is this more of a recent thing this season?
No, historically they've been more in a 5-1. They've gone into it a little bit, but yeah, this year they've been pretty committed to that system.
When you're playing a rival like Louisville, does it help in recruiting when you have these rivalry matches happening every single year? Like, do recruits pay attention to that at all?
I think so. I mean, you'd have to ask them, I think. But, I think it's helped our conference. I think it's helped the growth of the sport. A couple years ago, our league decided to do an unbalanced schedule, which was based on RPI. And so that is allowed us to play Louisville home and away every year, which has really helped, I think, protect RPI, but also just to get another really tough game and in front of a big crowd. And so, yeah, I definitely think it matters.
Do you wish this game was on TV? I think it's only on streaming on Friday. Do you wish this game was on television? Seems a bit ridiculous it's not.
I think a game that has over 10,000 people probably should be on a linear network.
Whenever you're scouting for this game, does it help that you both have 5 different common opponents, or does that not really matter whenever you're scouting for a game?
No, I mean it matters. Because you're able to see what other. I don't think it's an advantage. I just think both teams are able to see, hey, how did other teams try to defend them, or what worked and what didn't work.
Seems like both teams are two of the top blocking teams in the country right now. I mean, what makes Louisville such a great blocking team? Obviously, Cressy is one of the best blockers in the country, but as a whole, what makes them one of the better blocking teams in the country?
Yeah, I think Cressy certainly helps, and also the 6'2" probably helps. That their their right side block is good in all the rotations.
What did you make of the committee rankings that came out on Sunday? Obviously, happened during your game against Stanford. Did you look at them at all recently? Were you?
Yeah, I just heard about them after the game, and there's not really going to be a way to, it doesn't really matter because we haven't even played Louisville yet, or it doesn't. We're not really going to be able to compare us and Nebraska for reals until the tournament, if and when we face each other. So I was pleased that we were in a top 4 spot, which is, early, but we got to keep winning to prove that.
Do you try to use that as a point of motivation to your team at all, or does that not really matter that much to you?
No, more like just a point of education. So they obviously looked right now at, top 25 wins was the criteria they looked at a lot. And I think we're 6-1, and I think Nebraska was 9-1, or it's so more just to educate our team on what the committee looks at. I think top 50 was pretty close, but that can also change a little bit too. I mean, we both have some teams that are hovering right around that 25 RPI mark. So we'll see how it shakes out.
What makes Elena Scott one of the best liberos in the country? It seems like she's always, in the conversation for, All-American status and Player of the Week at times.
Yeah, because she can do both. She can pass and play defense. She has a good serve too. So yeah, any libero that is getting those kind of accolades is good at everything.
Coach, you've been using Blair in some interesting type of way. Sometimes just as a sub in the front row for Valeria for whenever Pitt is serving, or as a blocking sub. Why is that?
Well, she's a little bit more physical than Valeria, so it gives us a bigger block. We've also used her at times for Rachel Fairbanks. So she's good on the right and the left, and she's also a really good out-of-system hitter. So we'll keep doing that.
Seems like both teams bring back almost or most of their starting lineup from last year. Do you think that will make for great matchups this season as well?
We'll see. You never know till you play them, but I think it's good for the fans, that to be able to root for the same players or root against the same players. I think that makes it fun. But yeah, I'm expecting a really close match for sure, but you never know until you.
What did you like about the way you played against Stanford, and that you hope it, not just carries over for this match, but carries over for going forward?
Well, yeah, we pride ourselves in being a really great defensive team, and the probably the biggest thing we look at is opponent hitting percentage, and so we've been very good at that all year. But it's one thing to do that against an average opponent. It's another thing to do that against a Stanford or a Louisville. So I liked our opponent hitting percentage. I thought Rachel set really well. I liked her connection with Olivia. And I thought our block and defense made them pretty uncomfortable.
This series usually goes back and forth, and what usually do you see as the statistic or something in the game that wins the game compared to the other team losing it?
Well, again, every game has a different story, so I don't know what it'll be. Offensively, if you want to beat a good team, you want to hit over 300. That's always a goal for us going in against a good opponent. Is can our offense really be pretty dynamic? But yeah, when it's all said and done, I mean, we'll analyze the numbers, but any way we can win will be a good way.
I feel like when it comes to Emmy, I guess you talked about it on Sunday about the way you guys play on defense. Your digs are never going to be as high as some other teams. What are some of the things you see, maybe that the stats don't show from what Emmy has done this season, that's made your team so strong defensively?
Well, she's the best libero we've ever had, and she's one of the best in the country. She's really improved her setting. She's a great defender, and she's one of the best passers in the country. But I think she's gotten better the last 2 years, but this year of just consistency. But also she's gotten better at maybe taking a little bit more court. Early in her career, she just kind of liked to literally stay in her lane. But I think she's more comfortable now. She takes the lead with all the passers. I mean, she's watched way more video against servers than I have before every game. So she's the one that is really feels like she knows the opponent's servers, and she's kind of prepping the other passers to make sure they know it's coming. And so, yeah, improved every part of her game, but definitely is more of a leader in that way, and definitely takes more court.
I mentioned in the past about how well your group serves collectively, not just one or two people. Given Louisville's the talent they have with libero and just defensively overall, how much more important does the serving become against a team like that?
I mean, it's really important. I think it's probably a little bit like Stanford, where both teams are good passing teams. So there's this thought of, hey, you're not just going to get them out of system all the time. So one or two more times than the other team matters. And also just how are you going to serve in a way just to make them uncomfortable. And so, I don't think it'll come down to serve and pass, but it'll be a factor.
Coach, I mean, I looked at the NCAA tournament. They're changing the way they do the Sweet 16 Elite 8. They're having 4 games on Thursday and the Friday, and then 2 Elite 8 games on the Saturday and the Sunday. Do you like that change? Or would you rather have everyone playing on the Thursday and Saturday compared to them spreading it out almost like the way they do for basketball?
Yeah, I probably have to go through it first to tell you if I like it, but there's been proposals over the year to actually not have a Final Four, maybe have 3, an Elite Eight, if you will, for that final week of season. And I think there's something to that. That sounds interesting, of having, those Elite Eight games be at the Final Four site and packed arenas, and just to do just so volleyball maybe does something a little different than the basketballs, and just have almost like a festival week of volleyball. So I kind of like that idea, but ultimately I think whatever the powers that be decide gets us more fans and more TV is probably the best.
Are you surprised? I mean, stats don't tell the whole story when it comes to serving, but I was surprised that Louisville ranked, I guess, the lowest for service aces in the ACC, because we talked to Danny last year, and she said they're a very aggressive team when it comes to their serve, and I'm sure you've seen them serve as well, obviously, but are you surprised with that statistic, or is it just things?
Yeah, I haven't watched enough of their servers to know if I think they really changed their strategy, but we don't just look at serving, we look at opponent passing percentage, and we expect them to be a very good serving team.
Coach, you talked about there's 8,000 right now, it might be a sellout. What effect does crowd noise have on a volleyball game?
I think home court advantages matter, and I hope I think this would be our 4th sellout of the season, and the second one in the Pete would be just huge for our program, and it's a Friday night, and so football's the night before, so we not only do we think it's gonna be a great crowd, but we think there'll be a really great student section, which is all home court advantages matter, but I think the big student section on the floor matters a lot.
And they play a lot of similar opponents to you guys. I mean, obviously Stanford, but also Penn State as well. And do you think it's easier to, I guess, scout a team when you've seen them play another team earlier in the season? Do you ever use how they play against another team to look at how you played against them?
We look at it, but I don't think the word easy with scouting a really good team really pops into my mind. But I think they have all the teams now have such access to everyone else's video and stats that it's a good challenge to see who can come up with a better plan.
Any last questions for Coach?